It's the Go Gopher Podcast with Mike Grimm, episode number 167. I am Mike Grimm, voice of the Golden Gophers, and welcome back to the podcast. We're talking Golden Gopher football this week. We're inching closer and closer to next week's NFL draft. There should be a handful of Golden Gopher players who hear their names called, and we are going to find out all about them. Marcus Hendrickson's the Golden Gopher Director of Player Personnel. He is the liaison between the Gopher program and NFL scouts and NFL coaches. If they want to know more about the players, they work through Marcus. Marcus has many other duties as well with Minnesota, and in today's episode, we'll explore all of that, including what NFL personnel departments think of the Gopher prospects and how the Gophers get players NFL ready, among a host of other relevant topics. We'll have Marcus Hendrickson on the podcast coming up. Our Go Gopher podcast is presented by alumni-owned Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. If you're a business founder planning to exit your business, start by contacting Sunbelt Business Advisors or True North Mergers and Acquisitions. Sunbelt serves more businesses up to $5 million in revenue than anyone, and True North M&A serves companies with revenues up to $150 million. Get a confidential, no-cost, no-obligation business valuation started today. Hey, make the most of your life's work. Visit sunbeltminnesota.com or tnma.com today. We're also glad to have Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union with us as a sponsor of the Go Gopher podcast. They do so many great things for Gopher athletics and the community in general. Affinity Plus is your local credit union throughout the entire state of Minnesota. Find out more at affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. The Go Gopher podcast is also sponsored by Onyx Maps. Find out how to download the Onyx Fish app for free by listening to the Golden Gopher podcast. Fishing season is just about upon us. We're podcasting episode 167 from the Aquarius Home Services studio. We invite you to subscribe to the Go Gopher podcast. It's free to do so. You can also go back and listen to previous shows. Last week, for example, we featured new Golden Gopher men's basketball coach Nico Medved. He talked about his first 2 chaotic weeks on the job, recruiting among other things at the top of the list. Go back and have a listen. You'll really enjoy it. Among other things, the head basketball coach talked about growing up being a hockey player in Minnesota. This week, it's episode 167, and the Go Gopher podcast is talking Golden Gopher football with Director of Player Personnel Marcus Hendrickson. My conversation with him is next.
I'm Clay Geary, walk-on turned scholarship wide receiver for Gopher football.
And I'm Ben Utek, U of M alumni, Super Bowl champion, and Tony Dungy Uncommon Award winner.
We understand championship culture, which is why we're part of the True North family of companies.
True North invests in only elite teams, like the champion team at Sunbelt Business Advisors, Minnesota's largest seller of companies. To learn more about True North and our diverse family of independently owned companies, visit TrueNorthEquityPartners.com.
Keep the good times rolling without the regrets. Giggly THC beverages are your go-to for bold flavor and smooth vibes. Zero alcohol, no bad decisions. Just THC-infused cocktails, seltzers, and teas packed with natural ingredients and performance-boosting superfoods like ashwagandha and ginseng. Find Giggly at over 500 locations like Total Wine, MGM, and Cub Foods, or shop online at giggly.com. That's Gigli.com. Ready to upgrade your drink game? Use the code Giggly North, as in Giggly Talk North. Giggly North, Gigli North, for 50% off your first order. Giggly, sip smarter, feel better.
It's episode 167. We are talking Golden Gopher football. Marcus Hendrickson is the Director of Player Personnel for PJ Fleck and the Golden Gopher football team. He's a return visitor here, and it's usually about this time of year every year that we talk with Marcus because the NFL draft is just around the corner. Marcus, great to see you.
Great to see you.
Yeah, this is a busy time. It's always busy, right? But for you in particular, I suppose this is one of your busier times as you're portal, as we record Tuesday afternoon, portal reopens tomorrow. Spring ball's wrapping up this week. Open practice this afternoon for fans. And, yeah, this NFL draft, and you're kind of the liaison, right, between a lot of these NFL contacts and players and coaches and everything else.
Yeah, it's a very, very busy time of year. There's a lot going on, incoming players, outgoing players, our current roster. So it's definitely in the personnel world, it's a lot of stuff is changing. A lot of stuff is changing very quickly. And that's just kind of the nature of the world we're in right now.
Director of Player Personnel, tell us what that means today, because when we first started doing this podcast with you maybe 3 or 4 years ago, the role was generally the same, but there's been a lot of different rulings in terms of NIL and transfer portal and different things that have probably changed the nature of your job in some ways.
Yeah, so this will be my 9th season here with Coach Fleck, and it's been going back to January of 2017, and all we were focused on was high school recruiting. And we still had the February signing window, thankfully, in that class. So we were able to get a class together then. So then that was the majority, 99% of your roster was guys that you either signed out of high school or were walk-ons. And now you have transfers. There was one-time transfers, so you had guys coming into that first year that we took as transfers. Chris Williamson out of Florida, who had to sit out a year before he could play. Yeah. And then OJ, who came from Alabama, had to sit out a year. Both those guys were big players on our roster, and both in 18 and then also 19 with Chris. And so, but now then they said you could transfer once free, and now you can transfer basically as many times as you want. So you're constantly in a mode of change and adaptation and understanding what works at Minnesota. I think that's probably been the best thing for us and helped us with our sustainability, is knowing exactly who we are and what works for us geographically, personality-wise, culturally, for a team standpoint. But it's ever-changing, and the dynamic has gone from back, schools that used to have a lot of control, and now the players have a lot of control. And so people always say, how does this compare to the NFL model? Well, the NFL model, they had contracts, and guys were, you picked the guys. Now you have to recruit the guys, and you got to recruit them again, and you got to recruit them again, and you got to recruit them again. So even though they're committed, even though they're signed, even though they've been on your roster. But I think that, a lot of our best players are guys that started with us, came through with us. The guys we'll talk about are guys that we recruited out of high school. Our best players are always going to be the guys we recruit out of high school. And for those guys to stay, I think that shows, especially in this changing landscape from when they signed to when they've graduated now. So much has changed. There's so many other pressures outside that are, influencing these guys that affect their life. And these guys that have stayed and stuck it out are put themselves in a really good position. So, transfer portal has helped us a ton. There's guys we're going to talk about today that came from other schools as well. But it makes for a very hectic workplace sometimes. Yeah, so.
And as you mentioned, we will talk about some of these guys that will likely hear their names called next week. We'll talk about some guys that may not hear their names called, but will ultimately likely end up in an NFL camp and have a chance, because that there's always guys on every NFL roster that work their way through a rookie mini camp. Sometimes it's as basic as a tryout. Mm-hmm. Marcus Sherrill's a former Gopher, was a guy who got a tryout with the Vikings almost as a favor, and the next thing you know, he's multi-year NFL guy and a big factor. As we go through this, as you look at a total staff of a football program, there are varying things. There's recruiting coordinators, there's a coaching staff, there's analysts, there's all these guys. You're one of the guys, though, that really will see an athlete from the day he's maybe a 10th grader all the way through the day he gets drafted, right? I mean, the guys that really concentrate on high school recruiting, they're worried about high schoolers all the time. And of course, they're paying attention. But once they're players, once the guys that they've targeted, they get on campus and they start becoming players, they turn their attention back to the 9th and 10th and 11th graders and hope that the guys that they just brought in turn out to be really good. You, on the other hand, look at those guys as 9th, 10th, 11th graders, then they're on campus, you watch them, scouts ask you about them, you help them out, all the way. And even now, guys that have been out of school 3, 4, 5 years will come back and you're one of their first contacts.
Yeah, it's funny, being in the NFL, it's a very transactional relationship, and I think that's prepared me a lot for this current world of transactional nature of college football. But I think the unique thing, I was an in-house guy in the NFL, and then I was a road scout for the guy in the NFL, and the biggest difference for me is I like the college recruiting side of it, the evaluation side of it. but you lose a pulse of the guys on the team, the roster, when you're on the road all the fall. And so I think that's what I enjoy a lot about the college side right now. Here is just like you do get to see, Ariante Ursary develop from a no-star to, a potential high draft pick and see their growth and maturation. And then the type of program that we run with Coach Fleck, the guys that we produce, like it gives you confidence when I do spend all fall meeting with scouts from all the teams that come through on a daily basis and just talking about our guys, because it's easier to have conviction on the guys that you've brought in and developed, and you've seen them fail, you've seen them grow, you've seen, that adversity in life and in football and how that's shaped them and molded them to go on into a very difficult profession where it's dog eat dog. It's a true meritocracy where the best guys play, the best guys get paid, and preparing those guys and seeing them, some of them from where they started, and some of these guys that camped 3-4 times to get an offer, until now you're sending them out into the big C of the NFL. It's fun to see that growth and the relationships that you form. I know it's an open practice tonight, and I have a former NFL guy that was here when we got here reaching out to me before practice and just want to connect again. And even, being a resource for these guys through the process, educating them about what it takes to be a pro before they have to become a pro. I'm very consistent with my messaging with them about if your goal is to get to the NFL, you're not going to make it. Your goal should be to make it in the NFL. And so just that different mindset of what it's going to take. So some guys on our, current team that are exhausting eligibility, that they're going through their last spring ball right now. I'm like, hey, this may be your last break until the end of your rookie season. And so just preparing them on that timeline and the other stuff that's going to be on your plate from now until then. You got our season, you got the draft prep, all-star games, bowl games, and then combine prep, and then you've got meetings, you've got 30 visits, you've got all this stuff and all these people pulling on you, and it's just take the time when you have the time to really kind of focus in and get to work, because that's what your life's going to be here for a long time. So.
Probably, too, a chance at some point to catch your breath, right?
Yeah.
This might be your last chance to take a deep breath.
If you're going to take a break, take it right now, because we're going to get going again in the summer, and then the season starts, and it's a long, long train ride. So
take me through how it's probably at times a tightrope walk for you. You've got great credibility because of your NFL background. As you mentioned, you've been here with PJ for 9 years. You were at Western with him before. Scouts come in every practice I'm at. They're scouts. You're talking to them. But on the same time, as you mentioned, you bring these guys in. You like them. There's a reason you recruited them. So what's the fine line in talking to scouts about your own guys? In one, you want to push them. You want to make sure that they're getting the right looks, but also being honest with the scout, and then being honest with the player, because sometimes you probably have to have a tough conversation with the guy on occasion. Hey, the NFL scouts say this. So how is that? Maybe it's a tightrope walk, maybe it's not.
Well, it's a relationship, and it's a two-way street. There's a lot of guys that come through our doors, and they're on other campuses, and they see what the pool of players are. I don't always have a great understanding of what the pool of talent is in a given class. Some years the D-line's really strong, some years the D-line's really weak. And so helping educate a guy that's on our roster is like, should I come back for last year or not? Because of the relationships I have with a lot of these teams and a lot of these scouts, I can say, hey, just where do you think this guy would go if he left right now?
Sure.
And so that gives me some validity with our guys then too, of saying, hey, this isn't my opinion. This is the opinion of other guys. Sometimes I'm too close to a kid. I've seen them all their bad and all their good over the course of 3, 4, 5 years. And so sometimes I may have too much information. Sure. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's good to have, fresh eyes.
The warts on occasion that others may not.
Sometimes there's a play from 5 years ago that sticks in my craw from even a Sunday night practice when they were a true freshman.
Sure.
But it goes a long way. To have the relationships that I have, that Coach Fleck has, a lot of the guys on our staff have. Even now, we've had graduated some guys in the NFL on our coaching staff. So, it's it's a smaller world than people understand.
Yeah.
And I'm very honest with our guys. Is I'm not going to lie for you to these guys because that's not going to, the next kid in the next class.
Right.
I can't burn a bridge of trust and transparency for you because it's not fair to the next guy. Right. So I'm going to be honest with them about you. We have a standard in Minnesota for the guys that play here for us, and if thankfully, because of our program, if a guy can't live up to that standard on and off the field, they generally don't matriculate to that point. So that gives me the confidence because of the type of program that we run. If a guy's been at Minnesota for 4 years with us, I have every confidence and faith in their personal character, the football character, their work ethic, that they're going to do what it takes. May there be better players in a given year at that position? Like, that's for them to decide. But it's pretty easy from that standpoint for me to talk about our guys to the league.
Do the NFL guys talk to you about that? You've talked about that in previous podcasts about if you have managed to make your way through 4 or 5 years in this particular culture, because it's demanding. It's player friendly, but yet demanding. It's a pretty, I think, as I watch it and observe it, I think there's a craft to it, and I think it's done well here in terms of the demands, but yet the how player friendly it is as well. Because sometimes you think they're demanding, nobody wants to play there. That's not the case here. But if you make it, do NFL guys say, okay, we got confidence? If that kid is skilled enough mentally, he's ready to go for the NFL.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a hard program, but it's the type of kids that we recruit. That's what they want. They have a dream and a vision for their life to be successful. And Coach has probably said this 1,000 times. Like, our staff's job is to prepare them, day in and day out for what they say that they want. And it's their job to prepare and perform. So we as educators, and in my role as an educator in terms of the process and what the league is looking for and what the league wants, it's my job to help educate those guys on this is what it takes. And sometimes there's conversations where it's just like, hey, like, do you think that level of effort is going to get you a job in the NFL? But it's a trust conversation that's built over years. And thankfully for me, I'm not having these conversations with the freshmen that are walking in. It's the redshirt sophomores, juniors, and seniors that have generally established themselves as good players, and then it's more the fine tuning and the conversations I have for them is they can watch the game film. They don't need to come to Minnesota to watch the game film. They're coming to watch you practice. They're coming to watch you interact with your teammates. They're coming to see how you carry yourself, how you respond when you get beat, when you fall on the ground. How do you get up? There's so much little details that they want to poke a hole in every single thing that you do. And so Coach Fleck obviously runs a program that, like, he knows that. He's been a coach in the NFL. He played in the NFL. He understands like what it's like to be on the chopping block, and you've got to prepare yourself to give you the best chance day in and day out. And so much of that is not you don't just show up on an NFL training camp and just you have all the answers. You've got time to figure it out. If you're not prepared before you get there, it's going to be a lot harder to make it.
And it's and those fine line things, right? I mean, I think I read this morning and just kind of getting ready for this that the general rule of thumb is there's 500 to 600 college players that would be draftable. But yet, what is it, 280 get picked roughly?
Yeah, 255 to 260, depending on like compensatory picks in a given year.
I mean, there's rankings of the top 500 draft eligible players,
and a lot of most all those guys will get signed, and they have more information than the people writing those articles. They have the medical reports, they have the background and personal character reports, and all these guys have been the ones that have kind of. They get a little bit more access, and I think a lot of people do that are making those things. But it is a fine line. And some of the conversations I'm having with some of our guys right now for this next class is you're not necessarily competing with the guys on our roster right now. You're competing with the 30, 40 other guys at your position in the country that are going to be in your draft class. And what is going to be the difference between you and player X and Y there's a human element. There's a general manager. There's a head coach. There's a personnel department that they have to fall in love with you to draft you. They have to want you to draft you. How are you going to separate yourself from the other, 6'5", 260-pound DN that also runs a 4.6?
Yeah.
Is it how you play? Is it how you carry yourself? Is it how your coaches talk about you? How your teammates talk about you? Because we've had guys at all the All-Star games. We had a bunch of guys at the NFL Combine when Max Brosmer was interviewing, I'm sure there was more than one team that asked him, "What'd you think of Ariante Irsary?"
Sure.
Or Daniel Jackson.
Yeah.
So like they dig on all that stuff, and so there's. If you are not a good person, if you are not, who you present yourself to be, they're going to figure it out, and that's going to affect you at some point. So the faster you change and realize, like, this is what it's going to take for me to get to where I want to go, the easier road it's going to be.
Yeah.
So we say it's, a difficult program, but it's really not. If you put your best foot forward every day and you get up and come to work, like, you're going to be successful here.
Yeah, and be prepared. And even if it's not football, PJ talks about it all the time, just to move on in real life as well. And your chances of being in the NFL as a paid contracted player exponentially increase if you're drafted, right? Almost no draft picks get cut their rookie year because no front office wants to say we wasted a 5th round pick. Even if the guy ends up not being any good, they're usually going to keep him at least a year. So if you can get look, a lot of street free agents make it. There'll be Gophers that get a chance and probably make it. But if you can get in that pool of as you say, 270 that get drafted, then your chances of making it are exponentially better.
Yeah, there's a huge cliff from drafted and undrafted to make it. If you're a day 1, day 2 guy, it's almost guaranteed you're going to be on the roster, and almost guaranteed you're going to be on the roster for multiple years.
Yep.
When you start getting 4th round and then 5th rounds, you'll start seeing a few guys get cut, but even those guys end up almost to a man end up on their practice squad.
Yep.
So, but it's drafted is definitely where you want to go. Being undrafted isn't a death knell, though. There are a number of guys. And with the expansion of the practice squad, too, there are a lot more guys. So even on a 90-man roster, it cuts down to 53. But I think it's like 18 or 16 on the practice squad now. And then after 4 or 5 weeks in the NFL season, there's a dozen guys on injured reserve for each team. So then basically if you're in the top 75 to 80 going into training camp, you're probably going to be on an NFL roster at some point during the season. So
one of the things that fascinates me all the time, too, and you've talked about it with us on this show, is at practice, you mentioned these scouts come in, they can watch film, they can see games, they can do that, but they want to see how guys respond. But they also want to see in person just body types, right? There are certain traits, certain sizes, certain measurables, and you have this, you've mentioned before, you've had this where, some scout from some place will come over and say, hey, who's number 17? And all of a sudden you have to explain to him, what jaw joiner, whoever else. Yeah, that's a body type. Like, he's a freshman, he's not ready, but that's why we recruited him. Yeah. He's got this trait that is an NFL kind of trait. What do guys look for, and how much do you guys look for those things, even when you're looking at 10th grade film?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge proponent of body type, especially on the lines of scrimmage. There's only so many people in the world that are that big, and then from there it's like, what is their athletic ability, what is their intelligence, what is their football instincts, all that type of stuff. So, generally, if you're a 6'5" freshman in high school and you're 260 pounds, you're probably going to be recruited to play Division I football, even if you're not a good football player. Someone's going to start recruiting you and then hope that your development's going to play out. And so, this is the Big Ten. It's not the Little 10. You need size in the trenches. You need the physicality, the temperament, and those body types. But across the board, I always talk to our guys. I've got a number of guys that work with me in the evaluation side. It's always a sliding scale. So, we'll talk about like Justin Wally. Justin Wally's not a big corner. If he was a big corner coming from Mississippi, he probably doesn't end up at Minnesota. If he's a 6 foot ideal size corner, he probably doesn't end up at Minnesota. But what intrigued us by him was he was super athletic, super fast, super instinctive. He played on both sides of the ball, running back, quarterback, receiver, DB. Like, he just did it all, returned kicks, punts. So, like, you see a tremendous, tremendous football player. And I think part of the reason he was able to transition so quickly and play as a true freshman for us was his football instincts and just his ability. And so there again, we talk to teams now. If he was 5'11 and a half, 6 foot, he's probably a 20 to 40 pick in the draft because his film is that good.
Yeah, and corners are golden.
And so it's just, if you have the ideal body types and the ideal testing numbers, there's less variance to be wrong.
Yep.
And so much like anything, it's risk mitigation with some of these, these players. But if, when scouts walk in and see our practices, they're always like, I remember 3 years ago, it's like, who's number 0? Mm-hmm. That's Anthony Smith. He's a true freshman. Yeah. You can't talk to him. He's, what do you think I do all day? Just talk to you guys? That's kind of the joke I have with them too. It's like, so it's, we've had, it was the same thing with Daniel Fa'alele. We've had a lot of big body guys, and it's surprising me. There are a number of teams that these guys come to, because they go all across the country, and that's my favorite thing to do in the fall. Is about mid-August. I'm like, where you been? How they looking? Like, how do we stack up? Like, at least in just the eye test.
Sure,
because that's the first thing. It's like, if I'm a general manager and I'm going to pick a guy in the first round, I don't have to hit a home run, but I can't strike out. So if a guy doesn't look like a duck, walk like a duck, quack like a duck, I'm probably going to, avoid that player. Yeah. Maybe in the later round I'll take him, but it's a sliding scale of just ability and body type because those guys traditionally are more successful. So.
Let me read a quick commercial here, and then we're going to get into some specifics here with Marcus Hendrickson, Director of Player Personnel on Gopher football players specifically that will be having a chance next week to hear their name called. First, though, let's talk about Affinity Plus. They're your local credit union, proudly serving Minnesota since 1930. If you're a current Gopher student or a proud Golden Gopher alum, that makes you eligible to join this financial that wants to build a meaningful banking relationship and put you first. You can meet with a local employee at any of their branches statewide, including right off campus in Minneapolis. To learn more or find other ways to connect, go to their webpage, affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. That's affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. People-centered banking, perfect for Gophers. Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, federally insured by NCUA. We thank them for their support of Gopher athletics. Marcus Hendrickson with us. 15 players drafted in the last 5 years, 5 straight years with one first or second round pick. Ariante, of course, you're hoping he can go in rounds 1 or 2 to keep that streak alive. He is certainly the top-ranked Gopher prospect. So as we kind of run through these, we'll, these are in no particular order, but we're going to start with him because he is most likely the first guy to hear his name called next week.
Yeah, I mean, just talking body type there again, he's a big man. He moves really well. Like, he's a sudden and powerful guy. And his football background wasn't very, he didn't have a lot of playing experience before he got to us. And so I think the fact that he was able to start for 3 years with his background, I think it just speaks to, Coach Callahan's development of that group. But he is more of that prototypical NFL tackle. But I also think there's some teams that would like him at guard because of his ruggedness and his power. I was sitting in the draft last year, and I think there was 10 offensive linemen or close to it were drafted in the first round. And that's what I attempt to, almost like a preamble to this entire conversation. Every year the draft is its own entity. It's a living organism. Yeah. So, there was a number of quarterbacks drafted, a number of offensive linemen drafted last year. I think the first defensive player didn't come off until almost pick 20 or right around there. So that hasn't happened before. So would I be shocked if he was if he ended up in the first? No. Would I be shocked if he was still there in the third? Absolutely. Like, his window that I've been thinking for myself has been like 20 to 45 for a while now, and it just depends on who loves him, who really wants him, who really needs him. Do you think he can start right away, or is he a starter in a year or two? I think that'll be a big factor in it. I know, he loves Kansas City Chiefs. He's from Kansas City.
From there.
Kansas City has the 31st pick in the draft. He probably won't be there when they come around for their second pick. So I think that's part of it too. Is who has a need for a tackle, and where are they picking? Yeah. And so it'll be fun to see. I'm fingers crossed he's going to go in the first, but I'm pretty confident he'll be gone in the second.
Yeah,
so.
And it's funny too because as things go, he put down that great 40 at the combine and kind of was the talk of the combine. And it's such a reactionary thing. He was the talk of the combine for an hour or two, and then the next guy runs or whatever. Yeah. But all of a sudden, you see these mock drafts, and I saw one. He's like going as high as 13. It was at the Bears or 11 or wherever the Bears are. And now I saw one this morning that they have him going in like 77. And I'm like, how does that variance happen?
Well, I think it happened with Tyler Johnson a few years back in 2019 where some guy threw him out really high because he was a really productive, good college receiver.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone in our building was like, Tyler Johnson's going to be a 10th overall pick.
Right.
We thought he was going to be an NFL draft pick and have a good career, which he has. But it's just a lot of those guys are either working off of incomplete information or not all the information. And there again, it only takes one team. So you could go high on a guy or low on a guy, and they're going to be right or wrong, but they're going to do a new mock draft, and they're going to do a new mock draft. So the guys that are making these mock drafts,
right?
If you're the GM drafting these guys, that's on your tombstone.
Yeah.
Your picks are on your tombstone. That's you wanted that guy. So it's kind of that. I always thought it was funny, when I was in the NFL looking at some of these mock drafts, because they'd be like, "There's no way this guy is going to go there," you know. And you'll see a lot more movement like the week of the draft, because then you'll start hearing some stuff. Some agents will start getting some information, or some agents are pushing their guys or not pushing their guys. So it's an interesting kind of ecosystem, the NFL draft world, where it's fun to look at. I don't put a ton of stock in it. Outside the top 10, it's really in any given year, it's really a wild card.
Amoeba, right?
Yeah, because I'll talk to teams. They'll only have first round draft grades on 18 to 22 guys. And if you're picking at 25, but more often than not, one of those or more of those guys are going to be there when you pick. And so that's part of the way that teams draft down or draft up is, hey, we've pooled this group of players in this window, and hey, there's only one or two left. If we don't jump up, we're going to be stuck and we're going to have to get out. Whereas like if you're on the clock and you've got 5 guys that you've kind of tiered at the same grade, and you're not drafting based off a need, you're drafting off of best available, and someone comes and, hey, you want to drop down 5 spots, it's like we're for sure still going to get one of these guys, and then you're getting more draft capital. So like every team operates a little bit differently. But there again, in any given year, I would not be shocked if he's the 4th or 5th tackle taken, or if he's the 10th tackle taken. That's just they all see it differently.
Everybody's got a new or a different thought. When you were working in the NFL, I'm assuming you had some access to your team's draft board, what it looked like. How often would you guys sit in a room and maybe you don't pay attention at all, but look at mock drafts and just giggle a little bit, like that's crazy, or oh man, he's pretty close to where we're at? Because you got there's a lot of guys that really put their heart and soul in it. Then there's other guys who will just take up a NFL Draft Zone Central.com and grift on it. Just hey, I'm going to put one out, and if it shows up in a search 3,000 times, I'm going to make money. So did you do that some, compare and see, or laugh, or
we I think the only ones that we really put a lot of stock into, there was a couple guys that had some regional guys. News media used to be a lot more regional, so there used to be some beat reporters in each city that kind of had a pulse of like maybe what the team was thinking. The thing that we put the most stock in was who interviewed who at the combine. At the All-Star games, basically everybody talks to everybody. But who did you have? You're only allowed so many sit-downs at the combine. So, like, who sat down with who? You're only allowed 30 visits. Who sat down with or who visited to that team? So, like, which coaches came to pro days? Which team sent coaches to pro days? So for us, we had a number of offensive line coaches, and we had a number of defensive back coaches. So, like, the Wallies and the Ariantes, and those are the ones that are probably getting the most attention for some of those top higher round picks right now. And so like those are the type of things that are probably more key indicators. But there would always be like a couple guys that were clued in that probably helped you with some of that stuff. But it was mostly for fun, or if there was like a pattern. Yeah. Like who's this random guy that just started showing up on everyone's mocks? It wouldn't be random to us, but it would be kind of like maybe outside of.
So there's somebody that.
Yeah, you're always trying to game what you think is going to happen. Yeah, it never actually happens the way you think it's going to happen. Outside of the top 5 to 10 picks, because usually that's about how many like true blue chip players are in a given class. but it's always a fun exercise.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, well, so that's Ariante. So you're thinking first or second round with him?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Jaw Joyner, defensive end. We talked about body type. I mean, that was a true story, I think, that we told earlier, that you have a guy come who's 17. Yeah, he's a freshman.
Yeah.
Can't talk to him yet, but eventually we recruited him because he looks like that.
Yes. Yeah. No, Jaw's one of those guys that has high-end pass rush ability, and that's what the NFL wants and needs. And so there again, thinking about what positions are most valuable on a team, it's going to be the quarterbacks, it's going to be playmakers on offense, and then it's who can protect the quarterback, and then who can get after the quarterback. And so like corners, pass rushers, tackles, and then elite skill are always going to be probably more guys taken in a draft than linebackers or safeties or interior offensive linemen. So that's always kind of fun to watch. But Jaw's had a tremendous career for us. Like, super talented kid. He's always been fun to be around. A ton of energy. You see that, and I think wherever he ends up going, it's hard for me to, because another guy that had a good combine, performed well at his pro day. Gauging specifically where they're going to go, like. He could be a third. He could be a fourth. He could be a fifth. Like, I don't necessarily see him going lower than fifth, but, I've been wrong before just because he has a trait that they desire. And generally, round 1, 2, and 3 are generally kind of like guys with very few holes. And then those guys that maybe aren't perfect but still very good are kind of like 4 or 5, and then 6th, 7th round is probably like best available, or you're looking for a specific need, or there's not a ton of bodies at this position. But there again, if you get drafted at any point, you're a really good player. No doubt, you're one of the best. So Jaw Joyner, his explosiveness certainly it was fun to watch here. Cody Lindenberg, linebacker. Yep, Cody had a really good year this year. Very productive kid. He's super sharp, super tough, and that's kind of the thing that I get the most questions about with those guys. And he just checks all those boxes in terms of temperament and toughness, and he had a good line of linebackers to train under. You think of Jack Gibbons, you think of Mariano, those were both really sharp, tough guys, and I think Cody did a very good job of embodying that and playing in that manner. And so we saw a little bit there too towards the end of the year. We did a little bit more with him, kind of rushing the passer a little bit too, just kind of showcasing some of that other stuff and versatility because he is really athletic. So I think for him, it's I'm very confident he's going to get drafted. It's just a matter of, linebacker is not a position that usually gets drafted high. But there again, I think day 3, he's going to have a really good shot. But a guy that to me is like, it matters to where he goes than when he goes, because it's for him, it's going to be, he's going to make whatever team's better. He's going to play on teams. He's probably going to be the versatility, be a backup Mike, backup Will. And then as he develops, kind of similarly to like a Blake Cashman did, where, maybe he has some impact in some sub packages and some on teams early in his career, but then the longer he's in the game, the more experience he garners, I think the more valuable he's going to be. And that's why I think you see Blake in the second half of his NFL tenure so far has really taken off.
No doubt. And he seems, Cody, he looks like a football player, right? He's a guy that just, he wants to play football.
Oh, yeah. He's, great family, great kid. Like, you love him to death, You hope nothing for the best for him and his success in the NFL.
Here's a guy I'm going to ask you about that a year ago at this time, if we'd have brought him up, I don't know if people would have said, well, come on, like, he's a starter, but let's go. But Tyler Cooper, he's getting some buzz right now in terms of NFL potential.
Tyler is, he's a really athletic, big man. And I think there again, with the NFL, sometimes it's not necessarily what you've done, it's what they project you to do. And his ability to move in a short area with suddenness and power is something that I think, certain teams, he really fits their scheme. And there's, going back to recruiting kids out of high school, there's only so many guys that are as big as he is that moves as well as he does, to where it's you want to take as many of those guys as you can and then just figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the case with Tyler. Is he's going to have to go somewhere and develop and continue to grow and learn. But in terms of the physical, like body type, athletic ability, and he's a sharp kid, and he's a kid that the longer he was here, he's from small town Wisconsin, just like me. I think it's a big jump from there to the Big Ten. So it took some time for him to kind of get his feet under him. And then those COVID classes, it pushed a lot of guys later in their career. So I think, some of the opportunity didn't come until he was later, because a lot of guys stayed. But when he did, I thought he made the most of his opportunity. And, he played a little banged up this year, which, probably hurt his film at times. But I think also when you talk to teams in the NFL, like if you want to play on an offensive line in the NFL, you're going to have to play banged up.
Yeah, right.
So I think that showed his character and his toughness too. It's just competing week in and week out.
Can he be drafted, do you think? A chance?
I would not be shocked by him getting drafted because of he was a East-West guy. He had some I think he had a surgery he had to get taken care of. But he was an East-West guy. It wasn't a surgery. It was just a ankle sprain. He had to, so he didn't end up going to play, but he accepted an invite to go play. So I think that's where the league saw him, in terms of being at one of the top 2 All-Star games. And there's only, 25, 30 offensive linemen that'll be at those top All-Star games. So just being in that mix, he's already in that top pool of 40 or 50 offensive linemen in this draft class. So all it takes is one team to really fall in love with him.
We've talked about Arianta. We've talked about Tyler Cooper. How about Quinn Carroll, who has had just this incredible storied career, starting at Notre Dame and then coming here, and last year ends up getting thrown in at tackle, then at guard, and he's played everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, Quinn is just a super, super tough guy, super intelligent guy, and he's got a big body. And so, that physicalness that he brings, that toughness and intelligence that he brings, Wisconsin, Ariante goes down with the ankle, and then he's got to flip over. And I think, but that's the league, though, too. You're only going to be able to suit up 8 offensive linemen. Someone goes down, you're going to practice all week at right guard, you got to go to right tackle. Or the center just went down, you're our backup center too. You got to go snap.
Is there a chance that helped his draft status or his NFL prospects?
Absolutely. Playing both inside and outside in his tenure for us has definitely helped him. And because that's one of the questions I always get. He's played 4 spots for us in practice. He hasn't snapped, but I don't know how many teams want a 6'7" center.
Right.
But that's basically been my line with him is he'll be able to learn it all and being the availability. He's in his tenure with us, he was super durable.
I don't think he missed a game.
Yeah,
did he?
super tough, super smart, and so are there maybe a more athletic guy out there? Yeah, but this kid's pedigree and all the intangible traits, there again, would I be shocked if someone drafted him late? No, but do I think he's prepared himself to make it when he does get his opportunity? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, same thing with Cooper, has he snapped before? That's what I always get with the offensive linemen. It's what other positions have they played? Did they play defense in high school? What other sports did they play? It's always kind of an indicator of what type of athlete is this guy? How versatile is this guy? How smart is this guy? It's a way of asking those questions without being direct and asking that question. So.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. You mentioned Wally earlier in terms of his height is probably his detriment. If he's 6 foot or 6'1", he's probably playing at Alabama or Ole Miss or Oklahoma or someplace, but he's not, and so you got him, and he's been a 4-year starter. And to me, the most impressive thing about him is that he was just not scared to go. Everything's great about his coverage, but he wasn't scared to run support. He'd come up and put a helmet on a guy, and because you look around the Big Ten, that isn't always the case. Guys just willing tacklers from a cornerback spot.
Yeah, I don't know how willing I'd be to tackle some of these guys that run the ball in the Big Ten either. But I don't know if there's a guy that has more buzz right now than Wally in terms of the number of teams that reach out to me leading up to, we had our pro day back in mid-March and, talking to all these teams before they get here, he was like, he's my sleeper favorite type of guy. There's a lot of teams that were saying that. So I like trying to pin that down. Some teams are calling me like, hey, where do you think he's going to go? And I give an estimate, and I'm like, I honestly believe that there's so much traction with him right now. Like he's like, I wouldn't be surprised. 3rd round, 4th round is probably his ideal window right now, because he's a guy that I think can play as a rookie. I think he can probably start in some nickel packages, and I think that's kind of where you're looking in that 3rd, 4th round. You're looking for probably like a situational.
Is he
starter.
probably a slot NFL guy? Do you think? Or?
Yeah. But I do think his 4.40 at the combine helps him kind of stay on the outside.
Sure.
But it may be a matchup thing. When I was with Miami, we had 2 corners that were both 5'8", 5'9", but they were exceptional athletes. It was Grimes and Finnegan. They were just uncommon athletes. And I remember we played the Detroit Lions, and they had Megatron out there on the outside, and Megatron got him on a deep ball that was placed very well, and then Grimes got a pick in that game too, where his 44-inch vertical or whatever he had showed up. So I think it's the exception, it's not the rule. And I think guys like Winfield being a smaller DB coming out of here and having a ton of success. I think there are some teams that do realize that, the Bill Parcells, we're not going to touch a guy at this size. Doesn't always work.
Right.
But it's a good, starting point. But he's a tremendous kid. He's been awesome from day one. Grateful for his parents for sending him up here, from Mississippi.
No doubt. Yeah, he's been one of our favorite guys to watch, as has his counterpart on the other side of the football, offensively, Daniel Jackson. One of the all-time great receivers. Really, when you look at the numbers in Gopher history, every week it seemed he had a highlight catch, had clutch catches, really reduced the number of drops. I thought, and not that he was ever dropsy, but he didn't drop much last year. I mean, it was.
No, and he probably had one of the better. I mean, each of the last 2 seasons, he's had one of the best catches I saw in all of college football.
No question.
The opener against Nebraska, and then the one in the end zone against Michigan.
And if he hadn't had those, the 2 catches he made at UCLA would have been on every. Like at one point, he's tied up with the chain with the flag, and he still makes a catch.
I got in trouble with the officials in that game because it happened right in front of me, and he ruled it incomplete, and I watched a lot more football, I think, than that official did.
Yeah.
No, they're just doing their jobs.
But where does he slot, do you think? How does he look? What's his prospects?
It's kind of the inverse of what I was talking about with John Ariante, where like there's such a premium on O-line, D-line, because there's not enough of them. Whereas receiver in a given year, there's
a ton.
Like that's probably the most competitive position on an NFL roster. Even when you're looking at high school kids, there's so many really good athletes that play the wide receiver position. And so I think his pedigree, his body of work, I think is kind of like set the floor for him, where like someone's going to give him an opportunity. And I think his versatility and speed to play either inside and outside, some of the stuff that we've done with him, in terms of like the motions and pre-snap, post-snap type stuff, where you can see his versatility, you can see his intelligence, you can see his instincts. Like some team's going to fall in love with this kid.
Yeah.
It's probably day 3, but some team's going to fall in love.
And just a great kid too.
Oh, he's phenomenal. And he's worked so hard. And another guy that just like he laid it on the line for the University of Minnesota, week in, week out, just showing up to practice every day, showing up on Saturdays. Like he was a phenomenal kid to be around.
Nick Callerup, what's his prospect?
Nick's kind of got the market cornered with like big blocking tight ends.
Road grader, right?
Just there's not enough of them. He's kind of like in the Co Keefe mold,
right?
Like I remember talking to you about Co. Like some team's gonna love this guy.
You tipped us off on the podcast that Co could get drafted, and everyone was like, "What? Okay," and then he does.
Yeah, and there again, it's I know like. A lot of our guys end up going over to the Vikings because for the local day, and the Vikings I think only have 4 picks this year, but there's all the tight ends you hear talked about in the draft are generally 6'4", 240-pound move guys that are really athletic and catch the ball. But football's cyclical. Like, the more you spread it out and air it out, there's going to be a team that gets big and gets physical and runs the ball. Like, who won the Super Bowl this year?
Yeah.
Philadelphia Eagles, and they ran the rock.
Just bulldozing team.
Yeah. And you think about, like, the Baltimore Ravens, another team that just, like, very run heavy. And I think the play action game is getting so creative in the NFL too now, where that's such a big part of it. And having guys that are big and strong and physical at the point of attack are paramount. And he played on teams, and that's kind of where Coe's kind of made his hay too, is just being a teams guy. And Nick did a great job kind of filling that role for us the last few years. And I know he's had some good conversations with some teams. He was at the facility the other day, and I was talking to him. So, like, there again, like, would I be shocked if someone took a flyer on him? No, because there's probably only 3 or 4 guys in this draft that you could say are 6'5", 270 pounds that run a 4.7 and are willing to, put
just
their face
bang their body
and just, like,
there's got to be about 25 or 30 guys that the league needs of those guys, right? I mean, everybody's got a second team or third team tight end that comes in on the jumbo package or whatever else.
Yeah, and that's kind of that. What is football at the end of the day? It's you've got to, move another man against his will.
Yeah.
Like, there's like the physical, the rugby-esque nature of football is, and he's got a lot of those traits where, for me with him, it's like, wouldn't be surprised if he gets drafted. I would be hooting and hollering if he does, but it's him getting to a spot that appreciates that style of play. I think about, like, a team like the New England Patriots with Vrabel. Like, they've got 2 linebackers from the row the boat culture up there, and Robert Spillane, who played for us at Western Michigan, is just a hard-nosed, tough guy. Yep. And then they've got Jack Gibbons. Jack Gibbons is up there now too. Yeah. So, like, they're building a culture up there, and I think it's surrounded by smart, tough football players. And I think there are teams that value that type of stuff. And that's kind of what we're starting to become known for in the league, is like, hey, you want guys that are ready to play and are tough and love football, like, come to Minnesota.
We've got a few more on the list. I want to read a quick sponsor mention here. The weather is warming up. That means it's time to put your fish augers away and get out on the water. Grab the boat. Let the OnX Fish app, that is, help you to find the next best bite. The Fish app offers the most comprehensive fishing tools for increasing your success on the lake. Use the Fish app to find new places to fish. Sort by lakes, species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potential. OnX Fish also shows you hot spots, lake-by-lake regulations, private and public land ownership info, and more. And right now, download the OnX Fish app at the App Store or go to onxmaps.com/fish to get more information about the app that is changing the game in fishing. Marcus Hendrickson, we've got some time here. We're running out of time because you have practice to get to, but we've got guys. I mean, this is probably the biggest list in the times we've been doing this. 17 guys invited to Pro Day, others of interest. Ethan Robinson jumped out of the gym, which everyone at Pro Day was impressed with, raised the eyebrows. Long arms, another sure tackler, not scared to go put his helmet on a kneecap. What do you think of Ethan Robinson?
Yeah, for what the impression that Ethan left on me in his short time in Minnesota, he's only here a year, but just coming in and just, bringing that toughness and the competitiveness and the confidence. Playing corner is so much about confidence. And he didn't, he played Nick a little bit this year too. It's just, and I think, talking to scouts, like, he's a guy that I wish we had for more than 1 year, because I think it's so much easier to establish yourself after more than 1 year and have more than just kind of like it's so easy to talk about Wally's 4-year starter,
yep.
Ariante 3-year starter, Quinn 3-year starter. Ethan, I was like, I liked him. We obviously brought him to Minnesota because I liked him, but, like, to say that he's an NFL guy, let's get through some camp, let's get through some games, let's see how he responds. And just as the year continued, he was such a consistent, reliable player for us. And then he shows up at Pro Day and he jumps 42 inches and, 10-7 broad jump. And, he's played himself or put himself in a position where he's going to get an opportunity. There again, can I say where that opportunity is? Right now, I just can't. But he's such a competitive, tough kid, super smart, great family. Like, he's going to be successful no matter what happens, but he's going to get a legitimate opportunity.
Yeah, I love that kid. Jack Henderson had a great pro day, it looked like.
Yes, he did. Another, and Jack's a guy that showed up, for the scouts the year before. Like, they go back to, the North Carolina game. He had the pick in that game. They're like, who's this guy? And he's so, he's so driven to be successful. And you see that in his, how he plays the game. Like, he played with the toughness and the violence that you need to play at the next level. And there again, is he going to be a safety? Is he going to be a linebacker? He ran well enough where I think he can stay at safety. But he's a guy that is going to make a team as a special teams guy for sure. It's just, there again, he goes to the right fit, the right place. His wiring and his intelligence is going to put him in a position to play at the next level.
Elijah Spencer, wide receiver.
Yeah, Elijah, another guy that was a transfer from Charlotte that kind of started to come on at the end of the 23 season for us, and he was such a consistent player for us this year, with Jackson at the receiver spot. He had a solid pro day, and he's just catches the ball so well, and he's a longer frame guy that, he's going to get an opportunity when the draft's over, most likely. But he's, love everything about the kid and his mentality and the work that he put in, because I think that's some of these things with these transfer guys. It is a huge adjustment to come here and adapt. And some of the guys that are having the most success for us are kind of in the year 2 mold of it, with both Jack Henderson and Ethan. Just the return on investment in that second year from those guys was so good.
Elijah Spencer, too, I thought he was a great third down guy. He made it seem so many clutch. Max found him on third down a lot. And then in traffic, contested catches, it was exponentially better from year 1 here to what he put on film this year.
Yeah, and I just go back to the bowl game, and his ability to high point it and, to your point, catch, it's so hard to separate in the NFL. The athletes from the DBs are just so good. And so your window to create separation is so much smaller. So your ability to win in contested situations, or the quarterback can only throw it in a spot to get you the ball, and you have to adjust and get that. So
Danny Strigo, high school wrestler, football player, great athlete, right? It had the great story about was it the Senior Bowl he ended up at?
Yeah, so he was at the Hula Bowl, which is one of the smaller. It's not a small bowl, but it's kind of traditionally it's after the Senior Bowl, and East West are kind of competing for that top spot. But the Hula Bowl is kind of that next rung, and he did a really good job there. And then as all things do, guys get hurt or guys opt out, and he's a last minute addition, and he just shows up and ready to play and makes a couple plays right when he gets there. But that's Danny Strigo.
And that interview goes viral.
I mean, great. But he's the guy that scouts Danny will tell you this. He's not as athletic as some of the higher end kind of, Ja's a better athlete than him. There's, you think about NFL defensive linemen, and going back to our original conversation about body type, they're almost like creatures, like some of these guys. Yeah. If you've never been standing next to some of these human beings, they're so big, they move so fast. And Danny's big, he's athletic. Is he on that rare end of stuff? No, but what separates Danny from a lot of guys is that wrestling background. I'm sure wrestling with his brothers from the time he could walk is probably, he's arguably one of the toughest guys we've ever had play here in my opinion. And I think his intelligence, his toughness, is going to be what allows him to succeed, because he is a big body, he is tough. And I think of teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think of Pittsburgh Steelers being a former Cleveland Brown, those guys were tough. Those guys were physical. Like Danny Strigo screams to me Pittsburgh Steeler. Right. So I don't, he's going to end up somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised if he got drafted too, because of there again, a GM needs to fall in love with you to draft you. Then why is this guy? How's this guy going to make us better? How's he going to make our team? And then you see the Senior Bowl interview. You put on his film. You see how tough he is. You see how hard he plays. You see how relentless he is. That's the type of stuff that I'm going to take a chance on this guy, even though maybe he's not as fast or as explosive as some of these other guys, but he's a more proven commodity. He's a multi-year starter in the Big Ten who's been very productive. And then you go to practice, you see how he practices, you talk to people in the building, you hear how they talk about him. Like, it's so much easier to, fight for a guy like that.
Yeah.
So,
a couple of running backs, Jaron Mangum and Marcus Major. Marcus was kind of the sidekick most of the year, and then Mangum got a shot in the bowl game, and man, did he show some explosiveness in that game as well. So, assess those two guys.
Yeah, I think Marcus physically has a lot of those traits, and I think so much about the NFL running backs, they always talk about like wear and tear and how many carries and stuff like that. But you could tell he was a back that started at Oklahoma. He looks the part. He's an explosive kid, and I thought he did really well for us with those opportunities, and he tested really well at Pro Day. So like there again, like that's a position that gets turned over a lot in the NFL, and they're always looking for younger guys to kind of come in, and he's going to check a lot of those boxes. And even like kind of in that recruiting process, you talk to a lot of the people at Oklahoma about him, and like there's a lot of people there that were vouching for him. So he's a guy that I know scouts are very much aware about. And then Jaron's a kid that has had production at all of his spots, and he's not a unicorn, but he's pretty close in terms of body type of how big he is and strong he is, and he's got that north and south kind of power to him. And I think there again, if you're looking kind of in that Nick Collar-up mold, if you're looking for a big back, there's not a ton of big backs that are in a given class, and so I think his opportunities are going to be dictated by that. So
there's always like running backs too that just pop. Like there's guys that will show me like, well, look at his college numbers. They weren't very good. How did this guy pop? And then there's small college guys that put up big numbers, and they sometimes will pop. But every year somebody shows up in the NFL that you've never heard of as a running back, and then you look, he was back up somewhere and finally got a chance. And
I remember when we were in Miami, and we would do like a draft study like 3-4 years out, and we would look at some guys as to why were they successful or not. And you'd go back and watch their college film, and was there something that we missed on this guy? And there was a running back for the Washington Commanders who played, I think, at like Florida Atlantic. And I was like, I don't think we missed on the evaluation. I think the guy just went to a place that fit him, and he figured it out. Like sometimes it's not about it's timing and opportunity. And I say this where it matters where you go more so than when you go, because like who's in that building is no different when you're in college. Like there's guys that would be successful elsewhere that probably wouldn't be successful here, and there's guys that probably aren't successful elsewhere that would be successful here because of their personality and how they fit and what motivates them, what drives them. And maybe it's a scheme thing or it's proximity to home thing. You just don't know. We're all human beings, and I think that's why like scouting is an imperfect science. Personnel department it's an imperfect science, because what is the deciding factor for a kid to commit to you? What is the deciding factor for a kid to reach his potential or not? And that's what we do on a daily basis, is to find those answers and mitigate risk and, do the best with what you have. So.
It's funny too, because sometimes there's a comfort fit, like in any profession, right? You find the right fit and you can excel. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm going to try something else, and it doesn't work sometimes. So that's all part of it. All right, a couple of specialists, Dragan Kesich and Mark Crawford.
Two of the probably most fun,
they've been multi guest on the podcast.
Yeah, you guys probably know them as well as I do. They're tremendous people, and I think both. I know Mark's had some contact with teams, and obviously Dragan was at the combine, and specialists. That's a hard one, because there's only one per team.
Yep,
and you could be the 34th best kicker in the world, and you're on the street.
Yeah.
And what I emphasize with them is in my tenure in Cleveland, we had a punter tear his Achilles in preseason, and then we had our kicker go down mid-year, and then our long snapper got the yips. And so I remember having to do these gauntlet workouts with all these guys, and it's who shows up, who's ready, who's prepared, who can perform in the moment when they have to perform. And I think so much for specialists is you may only get one punt in a preseason game, but that's your Super Bowl punt or your Super Bowl kick, and you've got to be at your best. And And so, like, I'm optimistic for both those guys. I think Dragon's got a better chance because of his he's such a unique leg strength and big body and then personality. I wouldn't be surprised if he's doing podcasts with you, in a few years too, though, just running his own,
own deal.
Pat McAfee, Jr., over there. So I think both are going to be tremendously successful, and I do think they're both going to get a legitimate opportunity.
Yeah, and Dragon, I've talked about it before, he's just got this thunder foot. Like you can, like if you're just kind of walking around practice, all of a sudden when he's connected with the ball. I liken it, and I'm not the first to mention this, but I kind of liken it to when you're at batting practice at a baseball game, and you're down at the Twins game, or I worked Cardinals games for a while, and you just be down there, and all of a sudden you hear the bat crack, and you're like, oh, that's got to be Pujols, and you turn around, it is. Dragon's leg's a little like that. I mean, there's a thud to that thing when he kicks it.
Yeah, I mean, he's the most unique, specialist that I've been around in the college game in terms of both like the physical ability. He's kind of like a closing pitcher. He's got a little bit of that personality where he's like, I'm going to go out there and just rock this thing. I'm going to throw gas, strike this guy out. And he approaches the ball that way, and he's got the physical tools to make it. Is there going to be an opportunity and they're going to fit for him to be successful early in his career? But that doesn't mean kickers have a longer life than I think a lot of other positions too, to where
once you're in, right?
Yeah. It's maybe it's not year one, but you're on the workout circuit. You're one of the 2 or 3 guys that gets the call to come in, and then you make a team, and coaches don't want to change kickers and punters constantly. But so you get your opportunity, you go in there and you make all your kicks, or you make a high percentage of your kicks. Like
you can have a shot to be there.
You can stay there for a long time.
Right.
So
and he and that really is the key. Is it like you said? There's 32 jobs, so you got to figure it out and hope you get your shot. And when you get the chance, make them
100%.
I mean, that's it. Max Rosemar, I saved him for last. Gophers have not had a quarterback drafted since 1972, and this might be a chance.
Absolutely. He's so impressive. His personality and his approach and his consistency day in, day out, both physically and also personality-wise. And I think what we needed as a team and what he was able to do and bring to Minnesota football in his short time here is so impressive. And I think he's leaving a lasting impact in that quarterback room for years to come. And then also on our staff, there are guys that want how we operate and how we do things, and he embodied that. And he's, when I talk to scouts about him all year, is I think in terms of above the years, arm talent, all that stuff, like I don't think I would change anything. I think his arm is good enough. It's not a rare arm by any means, but his decision making, his intelligence, and arm strength are all above the line. And then he actually ran pretty well at Pro Day too. Yeah. So he actually impressed me with his wheels a little bit. So his preparation and how sharp he is, and he talks like a coach. He talks like an offensive coordinator, quarterback coach. And then I think the meetings that he's had he's impressed a lot of people. And there again, like how many quarterbacks are going to get drafted this year? I don't know.
Right. And
so, the teams that maybe really like him, are they in position to draft him? I don't know. It's just how it all shakes out. I feel good about it. I feel better about it after kind of the combine and the pro day, but you just never know.
Yeah. And it's weird too with quarterbacks, depending on where you're going to draft him. If you're going to draft him early, you want a 20-year-old that's been in college for just 2 or 3 years, and but with him, he's played a lot of football. Yeah. He's older. There's some value to that on a rookie contract or a practice squad.
Yeah.
I mean, right? I mean,
yeah, he'll be on a team this fall for sure. I'm very convinced of that. I think it's the fit, and how many teams are actually looking for a quarterback that can be both a good number 2. Because a lot of teams don't carry 3 as much as they used to, and so like a lot of your 3s are on the practice squad. But can you have a peer mentor, a guy that's really sharp? Like going back to what we talked about earlier, like becoming a pro before you're a pro. Like Max was a pro before he got here, and I think we helped kind of facilitate that higher growth with him, but he's wired right. I mean, he threw for pro day last year for us. He threw for pro day again this year. It's super impressive. Like the body of work and the time that takes and his detail with all that stuff. Like there's a lot of guys that started off their careers not at New Hampshire, but at some blue blood logos, and they have a lot more name recognition than him. But in terms of like sitting down with this kid, like he's gonna be sharp and he's gonna be impressive. And I think his physical tools are as good as a lot of the guys that are gonna get drafted. So it's just, is that one team, is Max your guy?
Yeah,
because quarterback always has more, more of a fingerprint on who the staff is and organization is than a receiver or a cornerback. And so I think there's always a lot more weight and thought put into it. And I think the more people think about Max, the more they're going to like Max.
You grew up in Wisconsin. Your brother Milt is the assistant general manager for the Packers. So are you going to go to the draft?
No, I think I was there right before we broke.
And I should mention it's in Green Bay. That's why.
It's in Green Bay. Yes. So I went there in end of July, right before we started camp. They were having like quarterbacks and rookies just to kind of talk with their staff about some roster management questions, just kind of talking shop a little bit. And he took me to the team shop and got me some NFL draft Green Bay gear that was pretty sweet. So my coffee mug in my office is a NFL draft Green Bay. Yeah. I think my dad's going to go up and just kind of maybe walk around and see it. And then I know my nephew, I think he's got 5 or 6 of his buddies that are going to be there too. So I feel bad for my brother because he's going to have a full house. And he'll probably sleep in the office one of those nights just to avoid the chaos at his house. But no, it's, I'm sure it's going to be a fun time. Every time I've been in Lambeau, I've been in Green Bay, it's always been a good time. Those people know what they're doing. But unfortunately, we're in transfer portal mode. I got a lot of stuff going, right? Keeping an eye on all our guys and tracking what's going on and fielding phone calls, last-minute phone calls. So, but unfortunately, no. But it'll probably be the best draft that's ever happened in the history of drafts because it's in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Green Bay, Wisconsin. How about that? Well, what we can say is Milt will be repping the Luther College Norse.
Yes, he will.
We had Kaler on a couple of weeks ago, tight ends coach. He was once at Wartburg.
Yep.
So we did not get into fisticuffs. It was a great podcast. People should listen. But you played linebacker at Luther. Yep. I played baseball with your brother. Yep. I was a senior when he was a freshman. Milt was a starter day one on football and baseball. He started first base from day one. I was in right field, and he had to cover all my mistakes out there. But we're repping the Norse.
Yeah. Now imagine the expectations of his youngest brother. Your oldest brother goes to Luther. He actually recruited me to go to Luther. He was the O-line coach, assistant head coach at the time. This is back in 2004. So I commit there, and then after his first season, he interned with the Packers back then for training camp, and then he left me that spring to go to the Baltimore Ravens. So it's fun times. But back to Coach Kaler in 2005, we did beat the Wartburg Knights.
The Norse beat the Knights.
Yep, at Luther College. A nice old school, muddy, rainy football game.
There's not many better places to watch a college football game than Carlson Stadium in Decorah, Iowa.
Yep.
I mean, down in the valley, the right time of fall, you got the leaves across the way.
If you ask Don or Nancy Hendrickson, I think they've probably seen more than their fair share
of games there. Yeah, I bet. I love the Norse. I can't say I'm a huge fan of the blue field, but everyone, it's you got to trademark it, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's good, and I think I always loved grass. I prefer playing on grass, but I think in the day and age too I know they use it for kind of year-round stuff now, which I think has been really helpful for not only their football team, but also I think their baseball and softball teams are able to do some infield type stuff out there, which has been really helpful for them. But it's a great day to be in the valley down there in Decorah.
Never a bad day in
Never
Decorah.
a bad day.
Never a bad day. Actually, I'm going down in a couple weeks. Luther baseball has their alumni weekend last week. weekend of the year, and I've not been down to a baseball game for a while. I spoke at the first pitch banquet in January. I'm on kind of the every 5-year speaking circuit with Coach Nickel on the baseball staff, so I'll look forward to that.
Yeah. Tell him hi for me.
I will. Sounds good. Always great to have you. I took you double what I told you. I said 35 minutes. We're at 70, but that's just the heat that you bring.
It's the way it is sometimes.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
He is Marcus Hendrickson, Director of Player Personnel for the Golden Gophers, and this is episode 167, the Go Gopher Podcast. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Gopher Director of Player Personnel Marcus Hendrickson and all the great insight about Gopher football as we get ready for next week's NFL Draft. I hope you enjoyed listening to that as much as I enjoyed being a part of it. The Go Gopher Podcast, episode 167, is presented by Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. If you're a business founder planning to exit your business, visit sunbeltminnesota.com or tnma.com. We're also partnered with Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, a locally member-owned full-service financial invested in you. You can learn more at affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. They have a top-ranked mobile app, so check that out as well. OnX Fish also sponsors the podcast. Happy fishing. Again, I'd invite you to listen to past podcasts, and please be sure to click that subscribe button to the Go Gopher Podcast right now. It's free to subscribe and free to listen at any time. And please share the link to this podcast with others so they can subscribe and listen as well. And if you enjoyed the show, please let us know with some positive feedback on your social media channels. We'll talk again next week.